is Lepsy. Today I'm going to be doing a new kind of video, which I'm pretty excited for. One of the things that I actually love to do is to make things with polymer clay, which is a cool kind of clay that once you make something, you can actually bake it and then it stays that way. It gets hard and you can almost have like your own little model that you've made yourself, which is pretty cool. Some of the stuff I've made in the past is I usually make Christmas ornaments for one of my friends, so I do like penguins and reindeer and things, but I've also done Lord Death from Soul Eater, which is pretty cool, and I've done a Pokemon Christmas ornament for one of my friends, and most recently I did a little tiny like chibi Pokemon for another one of my friends. And I just had this idea that it'd be really fun to show you guys some of the stuff that I've made, and like if I could even film myself making some of that and like showing you how I make it, I thought that that would be a lot of fun. So that's what I'm gonna do. So this first video is gonna be something nice and easy to start off with. So today I'm going to be making these little guys. They are forest spirits, otherwise known as Kodama, from the Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke. So along with these little guys, I'm also going to give them a stand to sit on, or I think it'd be kind of cute to have something a little extra besides just them. And I can't exactly make a whole tree to sit in. That would be a little past my skill set. So first off, I'm going to start with two kinds of brown clay, and I'm going to mix them together and give it kind of like a nice marbleized effect to simulate like wood grain. So I'm just taking about half and half of both of these, and I'm going to mix them together so that they look like this. Now, this clay isn't exactly the right color that I want. It's a little bit too dark, plus I don't know if it's going to be enough to make the stand the size that I want it, so I'm just adding a little bit more of my lighter caramel color, and I'm going to mix it again. So now this looks about how I want it to, and as you can see there, I'm going to start rolling it into kind of a log shape so that I can start building my stand. And then I'm also taking a little piece so that I can add a branch onto my tree to give it a little bit more of a branch look, I guess, so that you can tell exactly what it is when you look at my finished model. So here I'm just kind of shaping the branch, making sure that it's going to be able to sit on a flat surface and that it looks okay. And then I start with shaping my twig that's going to come off the branch, and I'm just kind of smoothing it out and putting it into like a stick shape. So once I finally get the right shape for it, I don't actually like there being seams on my clay, so I'm gonna actually take that and like rub it with my thumb to try and like, it's hard to describe, like melt the seam into the rest of the clay and smooth it. I did order some tools for this, which should be coming soon. I'm pretty excited. So hopefully then I won't have to use my hands. I can use those tools and it'll be a little bit easier. Okay, so now I'm finally happy with the shape of my branch, and now I'm going to start doing some detail work on it. So I've got this tool that helps me draw lines in my clay, and I'm just going to start creating some wood grain kind of look for this branch, and that kind of helps emphasize the marbling that I already have in there so that it really looks as close as I can get to an actual branch. So I'm just going to draw a whole bunch of lines all over this piece of clay to hopefully make it look a little bit less like a poop and more like a branch of wood. I'm just gonna skip over myself drawing all of these lines because it's not super interesting to watch. Basically, I just did the same thing over and over again, all over the piece of clay. And here is what it finally looks like. So now I'm going to create some leaves for the little branch that's sticking off of this piece of wood, just to give it a bit more of appearance of actually being a tree branch. So to do that, I'm going to get a couple colors of green. I'm going to get a little bit of dark green and some light green as well. What I'm going to do is make 3 leaves. I thought that that would look best on the little branch I have. And the color difference between these 2 types of greens is pretty drastic. So what I decided to do is actually mix one of those pieces of dark green in with the 2 lighter green colors so that they would look a lot more similar and like they belong together on a branch. So I form my clay into little teardrop shapes for the leaves, and then once I get a shape that I'm happy with, I'm going to get my line drawing tool and carve out the little indents that you would see to make some veins on the leaves. And I'm going to do this on both the front and back of the leaf, just to make it extra detailed. This takes me quite a while. I'll just show you my process for making one of these leaves and then kind of cut over the other 2 so that this video doesn't take forever. So once I've done the detail on the leaf to my satisfaction, I'm going to stick it on the branch along with the other 2 leaves that I've created. And that is the end of my wooden stand part. Now we can finally get into making the Kodama. So I'm going to start making the little Kodamas now. To do this, I'm going to mix a little bit of translucent white clay with a lot more of the plain white clay. In hindsight, I really should have used a lot more translucent clay. The Kodama shown in the Studio Ghibli films can kind of fade in and out of visibility, so it would have been really cool if I could get them to almost have that translucent effect, but unfortunately I didn't use enough of the translucent clay to do this. I started by making his little body, and then I'm going to do 2 arms for him. These are tricky because I'm quite a perfectionist, so I really like to make sure that they're both the same size, which can be a little bit difficult to do. So once I've made the 2 arms that are as equal as I can get them, I put them both on the body, and again I do the smoothing technique with my fingers to try and make it so that they're not looking like they're stuck on there and that they're actually part of his little body. I skipped over that because it's a lot of me just messing around with the place where the arms attach, and that's not really that fun to watch. So after I've gotten his arms on there and I'm happy with that, I started working on his head. The little guys in the picture that I'm using as reference don't have perfectly round heads, so I wasn't too concerned with making this one a perfect sphere either. I just basically rolled it between my hands until I got something mostly round, and then was pretty happy with that. So after that, I got out a little ball tool that I use for making eyes. So I used this to mark out where I was going to put both of his eyes and also his mouth too. And after that, I attached his head and his body to each other and tried to blend them to make it look just a little bit nicer. The last thing I need to do for this little guy is give him 2 legs. Since he's going to be sitting on this piece of wood, I don't really need to worry about blending them all that well to the bottom because no one's going to see it. So as long as I can make sure that they're both even, that's all I really care about. Okay, so after I attach his legs, this little guy is done for now, and then I'll be able to start working on our second one. So based on the little Kodamas in the picture I'm using as a reference, they're a couple different sizes. Some are bigger than others, and I've decided that the second one should be a little bit smaller, mostly just because the piece of wood I have them sitting on isn't all that big, and the first guy I made is probably going to take up a lot of space. So just like the last one, I'm going to start with the torso first. And then for this guy, I'm actually going to do the head next. Because he's a little bit smaller, I like to do the bigger details first. That way I can avoid smushing any finer details as I work with it. And then I'm going to use one of my tools to indent where I'd like the eyes and mouth to go. Then next, I'm going to make and attach both of his arms and his legs. I skipped through this quite a bit because it's exactly the same as the last guy I made, so you don't really need to see it all over again. While I was making his legs, I decided that I wanted to have him in a different pose than my first little guy. So I want to have him sitting forward a little bit, which is what you can kind of see me doing after I've got both of those legs on. I start positioning him by putting both of his legs together, and then it's a little hard to see, but I lean him forward a little bit and I put his arms on his legs so that he's kind of like leaning over and bracing himself on his legs. Finally, to finish off both of these little Kodama, I use some black clay and roll it into balls. These are going to be the eyes and mouths of the little guys. So after I've got a nice circle, I just smush it into the indents I made before for where I wanted these placed. The only thing you really need to be careful with in this step of the process is to make sure that you don't get any black clay anywhere that you don't want it on your white clay. Otherwise, it can leave a stain, and if you're a perfectionist like me, it pretty much ruins the piece because you're left with a big black stain on your white clay and it just really doesn't look good. So if you can tell here, I was super careful. After this black part, they're all done. So the last thing to do is to put them in their place on the tree branch, and then they'll be all ready for baking. I just want to make sure that they're nice and steady on the tree branch, because often when the clay bakes, it actually softens a little bit before it starts to harden, and a lot of times things will fall off while they're baking. So for example, I'm pretty sure those leaves are not going to stay on my branch, so I'll just take them off before I bake them. Okay, so this is what they look like after they've been baked. I didn't burn them at all, so that makes me pretty happy. So once they cooled down, I super glued the leaves back onto their branch, and this is what it looks like when it's been baked and is all put together. The last thing I'm going to do is apply some glaze to the leaves and my little Kodama just to make them look a little bit extra fancy. Once the painting's done, I'm actually all finished. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video. It has been a lot of fun to make, even though it is a lot more work than my previous videos, but I'm really hoping to make another one of these soon. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. I love reading them and responding to them, and as always, thanks for watching!
Bye!